Here we can see a rather funny Russian tank with what appears to be a large bird's nest on top of it. What that bird's nest is, I shall talk about in a different video. However, what strikes the eye is the hammer and sickle banner of the Soviet Union on the vehicle behind it. This photograph was taken in Ukraine. Here is another use of the communist flag, this time on a Russian BMP2 armoured personnel carrier. You may think that this is a one-off, a bit like perhaps putting somebody's football team colours on their tank or something like that. Maybe it is unusual. There are not many videos of this nature. However, this video comes from the Russian Ministry of Defence's organ Zviezda, and the text that goes with it read, "The Russian military are blocking and taking control of the areas on the territory of Ukraine occupied by the nationalist battalions and the army. Therefore, this is an official film and was approved of by the Russian censor for consumption at home." So I've spent a lot of time in Russia, and I can say quite categorically that most people I meet were opposed to the Soviet Union. However, they're the people that I meet who often tended to be more educated and liberal-minded. Opinion polls have shown that most Russians think that the collapse of the Soviet Union was bad, and there's clear nostalgia amongst many Russians to be the dominating part of a big empire. I would of course have to say that this is not so unusual in other countries. For example, when I was a child in the United Kingdom, many thought the same thing. Of course, when I was a child, the empire was gone, but my mother, who lived during the times of the empire in the UK, said that most of the people she came into contact with as a young lady were imperialists too. So this hankering back for empire, or this desire to dominate others, is not uniquely Russian. Of course, also amongst other things, we have to remember that lots of people think, things were better in the past. It was once, everything was good once. And now the political narrative in Russia reminds people that Stalin was a great figure who defeated fascism, and not the bloodthirsty mass murderer who killed more Soviet citizens than did Hitler.
Солнце 1 мая, солнце победы вставало над Москвой, над всей нашей великой страной. Уже сочтены дни и часы гитлеровской Германии. Уже водружено советское знамя над центром Берлина. А в центре Москвы, на Красной площади, перед великим Сталиным проходили войска, покрывшие себя бессмертной славой, славой победителей.
However, the people driving this vehicle were born well after the end of communism, or at least they could be born at the end of it and not really remember it. So why are they flying this flag? Now, the only conclusion I can come to is that they've fallen for the myth of the great Stalin and do not mind subjugating other peoples. What they don't seem to be aware of is that no one was safe with Stalin around. He murdered nearly all of the old Bolsheviks who took part in the revolution, and many others around him. Hundreds of thousands were killed for no reason at all, so much so that even Stalin himself had to put a stop to the Great Terror because the economy was in such a bad shape, because it was getting to the stage that so many people were either arrested or murdered that workers were lacking. Indeed, another point which is often missed as well about the Soviet Union is that it was a slave state. It required slaves to do these great works that were done, the canals and the other infrastructure things. Like Nazi Germany, also a slave state. Another thing that we've seen in this imperialist attack on Ukraine is the Z symbol being used. Now, obviously, the Z symbol is the identification for the army, but it's being used now as an icon, and this perhaps is indeed just a replacement for the swastika that many would like to wear. Or perhaps it's a replacement for the hammer and sickle. Given that the ideology of the people showing the Z symbol is clearly more akin to Nazism than the theoretical goals of communism, then we can only assume that this is a way of mass manipulation done by the likes of Hitler and Stalin in the past, both of whom, of course, were fervent nationalists. Stalin himself may not have been Russian, he was Georgian, but by the time he came to power, he certainly identified himself as such. Putin, a man with no ideological background other than that of nationalism and with no economic policy other than that of nationalism, came to power without a party. Although he conspired or helped conspire to ensure the defeat of the Communist Party in the 1996 general election in Russia, Putin's ideological home is in the Communist Party. He has stated that the collapse of the Soviet Union was the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the century, therefore presumably it's worse than that of the Second World War, the occupation and the mass murder of millions of Soviet citizens, or indeed the mass starvation in Russia or in the 1930s, or any of the other great catastrophes that hit the world. I would see this use of symbolism of communism as nothing other than the symbolism of imperialism and fascism, and certainly not that of the workers of the world uniting. After all, when the 100th anniversary of the revolution occurred, there was very little celebrating in Russia. Let's face it, the very last thing a fascist dictator would want is the Russian people revolting against him. I hope you found that of interest. I upload every Friday at 2000 hours Central European time, and currently I'm uploading very frequently because of the conflict in Ukraine, and you can see other videos related to this war, or should I say special military operation, on this channel. Thanks for watching.